A report from Group 17 by Robert C. O'Brien, Chapter 11. He heard the wishful story from the boy, then the sad, true story from the mother, and Fergus, that attached, lost his detachment. In so personal a conflict of beliefs over so grave an event, it was impossible not to take interest and eventually sides. At first, he was inclined to believe the boy, whose faith in his own logic and whose need for an adult convert were compelling. But in the end, Fergus joined the grown-ups, against John's hopeful arguments. The solid facts stood like ugly ramparts. The bicycle had been in its position on the river bank. The girl was totally gone, and had been gone now for 3 days. He would like to have seen the bicycle there for himself, but no matter. He heard the mother for himself. He had wandered by accident into the privacy of her grief, and would have sprung back instantly, but could not. He was held within it by the simple physical presence of her pale, wet, shivering son, clad in his lone sweater. When she saw him, emerging by chance from the front door just as they reached the house, she cried out as if praying, "John! Oh my God!" Then she saw Fergus, a stranger, and controlled herself. "I'm sorry, I've been upset." "He's all right," Fergus said, grasping the connection she had made between one drowned child and another nearly drowned. "He rode his bicycle into the river." "Allie's bicycle," John said. "Mother, I was trying," she interrupted, looking at his pallor and his shivering. "Go and change clothes, John, and get under a blanket. You'll be sick. You can tell me later." When John, after lying beside the river, had recovered enough to stand and walk up the hill, he had begun to talk rapidly, almost giddily. "The police said she got on her bike up there by the wall and rode the wrong way by mistake. They think an animal scared her and she got mixed up. How could she get mixed up? One way is uphill, the other way is down. She can't ride up. You can't ride up the hill." "When was this?" Fergus was inclined to agree with him. "Friday night." "Night." "They kept saying, 'It's easy to get lost in the woods at night.' But can't they see? If she rode the wrong way, she wouldn't be in the woods. She'd know right away. But if she was frightened by an animal, Allie wasn't scared of animals, not ever. When she was a little kid, if we went to town, all she wanted to do was to go to the zoo. She'd stay all day if you'd let her. Maybe it wasn't an animal. Then what? A person, a noise, who knows?" "Well," John said, "maybe. I thought of that. But she didn't go the wrong way by mistake. And she didn't ride up to the edge and fall off. They're wrong about that. The ground is too soft. If you ride hard enough to reach the edge, the bike goes over." "As you did." "Yes, you can't turn, not the way they say she did. I tried it 20 times. "Then what did happen to her? Why hasn't she come home?" "I don't know." John's voice rose. "I don't know. That's the trouble, and nobody's trying to find out." "Have you told your parents about what you think?" "I told my mother. She believes what the police say. My father is dead." So she was a widow. She left him in the living room. A room with a brick fireplace, a white mantel, a sofa, an upholstered chair, a hassock, an old but still handsome oriental rug, a quietly pleasant room with sunshine in the windows and green leaves outside. She came back carrying his sweater, and there was a new, perplexed expression on her face. "It's too wet to wear," she said. "I'm sorry. I can put it on the clothesline in the sun." "It doesn't matter," he said. "It's warmer now. I'll carry it." She shook her head and took the sweater out the back door. When she returned, she said, "I'll take it to you when it's dry if you'll tell me where. I don't know your name." "O'Neill. Fergus O'Neill." "John told me what happened, Mr. O'Neill. I hadn't understood. You saved him. He would have drowned." Thus it fell to Fergus to explain what he had done and what John had told him. He wasn't just being careless or foolish. You can't blame him too much. He was trying to find out what happened to his sister. If he had drowned," she said, "I would have—" She stopped and sat down on the sofa, hands folded on her knees like a schoolchild on a bench. "I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what to do now. It's too much for him to stand, too hard at his age. You see, his father died only last year. After that, the children seemed to be able to help each other. They stayed together so much, but now they can't. They need Allison. John thinks he's got to find her." Fergus thought, too much to stand at any age. Was it worse to lose a father than a husband, a sister than a daughter? She went on, "He won't believe. He won't grasp the idea that she drowned. What should I do, pretend to believe him? Or try to persuade him that she's dead? Either one is bad." "I don't know." Fergus said. Why don't you tell me what really did happen? She told him, starting with Willis's coming home alone and ending with their trip to the river in the dark. 3 of them in the small flashlight looking for Allie and finding only her bicycle in the mud. She told it in a quiet monologue, as if, since he had asked her, and since he had saved her son's life, it was her duty to do so. He marveled that she could tell it at all. He thought he had never met anyone in such despair, no one at least, who could confess her own anguish with such self-control. When the confession was over, he wanted to grant absolution, to put a hand on her shoulder and say, "It will be all right." But he could not. It would not be all right. "You see," she said in the end, "the point is that John went to the river only a few minutes after Willis came back. Then we all went. That's what the policeman finally realized. There wasn't time for anything else to happen to her." It was noon by the time Fergus reached the dock at the end of the stone peninsula under the wall. That, at least, was as he had planned it. He had no reason to believe that Villa Petrograd's, Dr. Schutz's water pumping operation ran all day, whatever its purpose, but he hoped it might run at the same time each day. It had been about noon when he first discovered it. This time, not wanting to risk again the attention of the Russian watchman, he did not climb onto the dock itself. Instead, as he came in sight, he set down his paddle and took from his fishing box the 3 small plastic bottles, which he had marked with the numerals 1, 2, and 3. Bottle number 1 would be for intake, the river water as it entered the pipe. The canoe drifted downstream and scraped the dock. His left hand held the concrete edge, his right arm, sleeve rolled up, bottle in hand, the loosened plastic cork between thumb and index finger plunged into the frigid water, found the barred opening, and felt the suction of the intake. The pump was running. The bottle opened, gave off a small bubble, full, recorked, was in the fishing box. On the other side, the outflow, he was more careful. He took 2 samples, each time pushing his hand as far as it would go up the iron throat, corking hard and tight before removing the bottle. Done, he let go and the canoe spun away downstream toward the rapids. He watched the gate in the wall high overhead for sign of activity. When he saw there was none, he picked up the paddle. On the way upstream, he did not stop to fish, but paddled steadily. He had an errand to perform in the afternoon. He passed the corner of the wall, saw it leading up the hill, and thought of the house above. A house, one could tell, peculiarly chosen for joy, and stricken instead by disaster, filled with sorrow through no fault of its own. He thought. It was no concern of his, but the thought disturbed him. It seemed wrong. He had a momentary feeling, very powerful, of déjà vu, and then he remembered another day on another river when he was 14 years old, fishing in a blunt-ended wooden rowboat anchored close to shore above rapids. He had watched with curiosity the frantic activity of a pair of thrushes, or thrashers. He was never sure which was which, 100 feet upstream. They were diving at something in the water, attacking it, driving it away with a ferocity he had never seen songbirds exhibit before, all accompanied by a shrill, angry twittering. A snake, a snapping turtle, a water rat, something that raided nests, broke eggs, or ate baby birds. It drifted or swam downstream toward him. It was going to pass close to his boat. It did, gliding between him and the shore. He stared down at it and saw he had been mistaken. It was a baby bird, a small water-soaked, big-headed thing, struggling weakly, unable to rise, its head drooping under the water half the time. One of the parent birds swooped past his head, so close he could feel the flutter from its wings. He pulled back, startled, and the baby bird slid past the end of the boat, speeding with the narrowing current until it reached the rapids and went under. Not until then did it occur to him that he could, by reaching out a hand, have lifted it from the water, put it on an oar blade, and placed it gently ashore. He should have done it instinctively, and the instinct had been too weak, too slow. For the next several days, the thought had worried him, returning so disturbingly that he had practiced forcing it out of his mind, but it had never really gone. As he paddled the canoe up to Mr. Wilcox's boathouse, he remembered his sweater. In the telling and hearing of Allison's story, both he and Mrs. Adam had forgotten entirely it was still on her clothesline. And that's the end of chapter 11.